Yep, let's go. So then we'll come back to order. We are at that order of business for bills on third and final reading. Will the reading clerk please read Senate File 1001? Third reading of the Senate File 1001.
Senate File 1001, Emergency Appropriations, COVID-19, sponsored by Management Council.
Thank you. There are amendments. The first amendment on Senate File 1001 is third reading amendment number 1, the Hicks Amendment. Senator, well, can we read in that amendment, please, Chief Clerk?
Third reading amendment number 1, page 8, line 6.
Thank you. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I would like to withdraw that amendment.
That objection, it is withdrawn. Third reading amendment number 2. Will the reading clerk please read the amendment?
Third reading amendment number 2, page 1, line 3.
Thank you. Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1001 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Do we have amendment? We have seconds. Do we have any seconds on third reading amendment number 2? Once again, do we have any seconds on?
We do, Mr. President. I've got about 10 of them.
I have none whatsoever on my screen.
You let me read them for you. I have
Please do.
Kinski, Agar, Baldwin, Boner, Steinmetz, and James.
Okay, thank you. There they are. All of a sudden they just popped up. Thank you very much. Senator Beitman.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. What we have here is kind of a last-ditch plan from my end to get this money out where it needs to go, and that is directly to the people of Wyoming. As you'll see, starting at line 16 on the amendment, it would take the $1,200,000,000 and divide it up evenly amongst Wyoming citizens as of March 1st, 2020, and cut them a stimulus check, and leaving $50 million for the governor to use as he sees fit. The reasoning behind this is talking with people back home and talking to business owners. They like the idea of getting money into the economy quickly. The PPP money is going to be running out very soon, and I think we're going to see a lot of hardship hitting here come the end of June, and no better way to get this money out than to get everybody a stimulus check. I know it's going to be controversial, but I just see the way things are going, it's looking like we're going to be withholding quite a bit of this $1.25 billion, and it's not going to get out in a timely fashion. So that's the basis for the amendment, and I look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. We're on the amendment. Further discussion? Further discussion? Senator Bebout.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a question. So as I understand the COVID, the money that goes out, it's to be audited that it's COVID related. So if you distributed this money to 1.2 billion to the citizens of Wyoming and they audit and they find out that we haven't complied, how are we going to pay it back?
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on this bill, on this amendment? Any other questions or comments on this amendment? For your second time, Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. And that is a good question. And that is something that will need to be addressed through department rules and regulations.
All right, thank you. The question is, shall the Senate adopt third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1001? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Actually,
Roll call vote. Mr.
actually,
President.
this does have an appropriation in it, so we've got to do a roll call. So 86, that last request. Will the chief clerk please call the roll on amendment number 2, third reading amendment number 2?
Agar. Anderson.
Anderson, no.
No. Anselmi Dalton.
No.
No. Baldwin.
Baldwin, no.
No. Bebout.
About no.
No. Beitman.
Aye.
Aye. Boner.
Aye.
Aye. Bouchard.
Aye.
Aye. Case.
Case, aye.
Aye. Coe.
No.
No. Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Driscoll.
Driscoll, no.
No. Ellis.
No.
No. Guru.
Rue, no.
No. Hicks.
Hicks, aye.
Aye. Hutchings. No. James.
Aye.
Aye. Kinski.
No.
No. Cost.
Cost, no.
No. Landon.
No.
No. Moniz.
No.
No. Nethercott.
No.
No. Pappas.
No.
No. Rothfuss.
No.
No. Schuler.
No.
No. Scott.
No.
No. Steinmetz.
Aye.
Aye. Von Plater.
No.
No. Wasserberger, excuse. President Perkins.
No.
No. Closing vote. I'm sorry.
Ellen,
Agar.
no.
Agar, no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. On the amendment, 8 aye, 21 no, 1 excused.
The vote being in the negative, the amendment is not adopted. We're on third reading amendment number 3. Will the reading clerk, excuse me, will the chief clerk please read in the amendment?
Third reading amendment number 3, page 10, line 2.
Thank you. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 1001 and ask for 6 seconds.
Senator Baldwin is a second. Senator Costa is a second. Senator Agar is a second. Senator Boner is a second. Senator Hutchings is a second. Senator Moniz is a second. Senator Kinski.
A very simple amendment that I'm bringing on behalf of hospital district and a rural healthcare district. In page 10, line 2 of the bill, it says Wyoming healthcare providers and healthcare facilities. Staff didn't feel comfortable committing that would include rural healthcare districts and hospital districts. We think that was the intent. And so belt and suspenders approach, we're just going to go ahead and add those in.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Discussion on this amendment? I'm seeing none. Or if the question is, will the Senate adopt third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 1001? All those in favor, please raise your hand.
$25, Mr. President.
Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand.
One,
Thank you. Should be, there's two, Senator Case and Senator Rothfuss is who I saw.
Oh, I'm sorry. I only saw Senator Case, so that would be 2.
Okay. You vote in the affirmative. Senate, or third reading amendment number 3 has been adopted. Third reading amendment number 4. Will the reading clerk please read the 4th amendment?
Third reading amendment number 4, page 11, after line 13.
Thank you. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to withdraw this amendment.
Without objection, the amendment is
Just
withdrawn.
withdraw my second.
They were already lining up to second you. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes. I don't have any other amendment, third reading amendments for Senate File 1001. Madam Chief Clerk, do you have any other amendments other than that you're aware of? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We're on the bill. Discussion on the bill. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, this bill I found to be, I've been debating as to whether or not to vote for this or not. I think the key issue is not, is the stimulus money going to be spent, but will we be better off spending it according to this bill or better off leaving it to the governor to spend using the B11 process? Mr. President, there's dueling legal opinions on how extensive the B11 process can be used. Back in 2003, there was a dispute and there were dueling legal opinions. At that point, the Attorney General was quite expansive in what could be done. The LSO staff attorneys were much more restrictive. Frankly, I think as a practical matter, in this case, the Attorney General would prevail because it'd be the executive branch that would spend it, and then it would be a done deal. I don't think it would wind up in court. And I think that the governor could do almost everything in this bill except the money for the legislative and the judicial branches, which are really quite small in the total sweep of the bill. So I think the real question is, did we put some ornaments, improvements, whatever you want to call it, in here that would get us in audit trouble with the feds? And that's, I think, a very, very debatable question. But the point I would make is if you choose to vote no, you aren't opposed to spending the money. The question is, how do you think it's going to be best spent with this bill or with the governor? And are there some things in this bill that could get us in trouble?
Thanks, Senator Scott. Further discussion on we're on the bill. Further discussion on the bill. Seeing none. Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall Senate File 1001 pass the Senate? Will the Chief Clerk please call the roll?
Agar?
Agar, aye.
Aye. Anderson?
Anderson, aye.
Aye. Anselmi Dalton?
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin?
Baldwin, aye.
Aye. Bebout?
Bebout, aye.
Aye. Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Boner?
Aye.
Aye. Bouchard?
Bouchard, aye.
Aye. Case?
No.
No. Coe?
Coe, aye.
Aye. Dockstetter?
Dockstetter, aye.
Aye. Driscoll?
Driscoll, aye.
Aye. Ellis?
Aye.
Aye. Guru? Guru?
Drew excused.
No, he's here.
He is. Right. Guru, aye. Sorry.
Guru? Aye. Hicks? Hicks?
Hicks, aye.
Aye. Hutchings? I, James.
Aye.
I, Kinsky.
Aye.
I, Cost.
Cost, aye.
I, Landon.
Aye.
I, Moniz.
Aye.
I, Nethercott.
Aye.
I, Pappas.
Aye.
I, Rothfuss.
Aye.
I, Schuler. Schuler's. I, Scott.
No.
No. Steinmetz.
Aye.
I, Von Plater.
Aye.
I, Wasserberger, excuse President Perkins.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate file 1001, 27 aye, 2 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, Senate File 1001 has passed the Senate. Senate File 1002, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate file 1002, emergency government action, COVID-19, an act relating to emergency aid and emergency procedures in response to the COVID-19 novel coronavirus pandemic, sponsored by Management Council.
Thank you. I have one amendment. Will the reading clerk please read the amendment?
Third reading amendment number 1, page 1, line 2.
Thank you. Senator Anselmi Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's a corrected copy and it's not showing up, and I think they're trying to fix that right now. I had asked them, and they said if I refresh, but it should have a Romanet 1 and 2 in it. Does anyone have that or see that?
Definitely
No,
have that, Mr. President.
I do not have a corrected copy. I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's
Refresh your, all you have to do is refresh your screen and it's there.
I have a corrected copy.
Okay, I see it now. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
I wait for everyone to be ready, Mr. President.
Hang on.
Mr. President, I can read it from the electronic version and I'll bring you a copy.
I'll tell you what, I'll find the electronic version. Just go ahead and read it and we'll keep going.
Okay. Third reading amendment number 1, corrected copy, page 1, line 2.
Thank you. Senator Anselmi Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the adoption of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1002 and ask for the necessary seconds.
Thank you. We've got Senator Hutchings, Senator Driscoll, Senator Von Plater, and Senator Koss, Senator Schuler, Senator Landon, Senator Baldwin. There you go. I think we got plenty there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. What this does is it essentially takes Senate File 1005, modifies it, and places it into Senate File 1002. So on page 1 of the amendment, in line 2, after pandemic, it inserts providing temporary immunity from civil liability for damages and injuries resulting from exposure to coronaviruses as specified. And then it goes down, and on line 10 and 11, this is where the beginning starts. On line 15, it defines a business entity, which includes it to be a sole proprietorship as requested by the good chair of judiciary. And then on line 23, it limits it only to coronavirus 19, as that was a concern with some members. On line 27, essentially what it does is it says that except as provided in subsection C below, that the property owner, the lessee, the user, business entity will be immune from civil liability for extra emissions on the property of on the property or premises, and then also at any other location where business is conducted to pick up the concern of off-premise use. And then in section C, it says it will not grant immunity if it comes from willful or wanton misconduct, and this is on page 2, the reckless infliction of harm or injury or intentional infliction of harm or injury. And then section D of this amendment, it says that it will only go until December 31st, 2021. It has a sunset date, and it's repealed after that. And that's the amendment, and I would ask for any questions and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. We're on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. It looks like we're replacing section 1, but do you need to also include the new section 2? Makes the old section 1 into section 2? We're not eliminating that, it doesn't look like. We're just creating a new section 1. So I think we need to do something with that old section 1.
Well, just as a point of order, if line 6 is that you insert this, then you just renumber as necessary. So section 1, the old section 1 becomes section 2 and so forth. Fine, thank you. Any other discussion? Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I am a little, more than a little concerned that this is a step too far in altering a bill that is too unrelated to the bill that was introduced. I'm very much in sympathy with what the good senator is trying to do, but this one is one that would get litigated, and I think we may be going one step too far in putting an unrelated item in here and changing a bill too much from what it was introduced.
So is this, are you it's beyond entirely, so your question is on germaneness to the bill?
Germaneness to the bill, are we changing a bill in violation of the Constitution?
And the constitutionality. So
Yeah.
both of those, does that understand your objection, Senator
Yeah,
Scott?
yeah, I think it's a, Mr. President, I think it's a constitutional question. And I'm trying to raise it and I'm hoping we'll get some debate on it because I don't pretend to have the definitive answer on it.
Okay, so we're right now we're on. Thank you. So at this point, I stand corrected. It's not an objection based on germaneness. It's just a discussion with respect to constitutionality. Thank you very much. Further discussion on the amendment. Thank you, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would object to it as on the grounds of germaneness, that it is not germane to the bill, and would ask for a ruling from the chair with regard to the germaneness of this amendment to the bill.
Okay, so thank you. We now have objection on germaneness. Are there any, anybody want to, on the question of germaneness, Senator Kinski?
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is presented to us by the Management Council, falls under the umbrella of emergency, and what winds it all together, I guess, is emergency. I think we had some of this discussion in prior conversations about the bill. In this, we have WCDA loans, we have workers' compensation, we have premium credits, we have unemployment insurance, and we have tenant evictions. So it seems to run the table, and this seems of a piece with what we're trying to do to deal with the emergency. So I think given the tenor of this bill, plus the amendment to the bill title, that it's germane. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other discussion? We're on the objection. Discussion on the objection.
Point of order.
Senator Rothfuss, point of order.
Thank you. I could be wrong and it's late, but I think you rule. I don't think it's debatable. You rule, then it can be appealed to the Rules Committee. Then it would come back to the floor actually for debate. I think that's the order of protocol on a ruling appeal to the chair on germaneness. Unless I'm mistaken, I guess I'd refer to the clerk on the protocol.
Thank you. Madam Clerk. you need 4 hands and 3 heads to do your job tonight.
I believe Senator Rothfuss is correct on germaneness. That could be a ruling from the chair. And then if he wishes to, it could go to rules.
Thank you. As I look at the title of the bill, or I could rule on this. As I look at the title of the bill, as you know, the title of the bill is actually lines 1 through 11. And as you look at the question is whether the original act or the original title of the act is expansive enough to put people on notice that this might be considered as a potential. As you read, quite frankly, as I read the title, the only place that I could see it fitting in anywhere would be in the very first sentence, which is, or the very first phrase or clause, which is an act relating to emergency aid and emergency procedures in response to the COVID-19 novel coronavirus pandemic. Other than that, it's relatively specific, referring to unemployment benefits, authorizing agreement with the federal government, expenditure of federal funds, creating programs to avoid eviction of needy persons, many employment compensation, workers' compensation, providing additional authority under the governor, providing workers' compensation premium credits, and providing for an appropriation and effective date. Immunity is not an emergency procedure from the government. It is it's just, so my ruling is that it's not germane. So at that point, if you want to, that's my ruling. Thank you. So we're back
Mr.
to.
President,
Yes.
I'd like to appeal to Rules Committee on the germaneness ruling.
Okay. Hopefully, I don't know if we have there's a quick way to do this, but hopefully we have still some technical support that can help us do that. There's a way to just pull aside and put us in the chat room.
Yes,
the rules.
Anthony will get that going for us.
So if we'll stand at ease to the sound of the gavel. The Rules Committee will just wait right here, and there's a way to take us out of Zoom into in a separate Zoom room with actually leaving this program. So,
Mr. President, it's 402 section in Masons.
Members. Drew, Anselmi, Doughton, Dockstetter, Driscoll, and Rothfuss. So we've got the bringer of the amendment, Dockstetter and Driscoll.
we got our quorum back?
Just about. Yes, we're there, Mr. President.
All right, the committee rules is met, and the ruling of the chair has been overruled, so it's been ruled germane. So we're back on the bill. Further discussion on the bill. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. 3 quick points out of concern for this particular amendment. The first is that even if it was ruled germane by really 3 of the sponsors that were on the committee, it does not mean it's constitutional. So if it's not within the title, it does not achieve constitutionality with regard to consistency with the original title, and it's clearly not. That's why you have to add a lot of other title points. So from that standpoint, I would say this amendment's unconstitutional. The second point I would make is that there are 2 topics in this title. This is not a uniform topic title. This is a multi-purpose bill, which once again is unconstitutional, making the amendments challengeable by the chamber, and hopefully the chamber would take that into consideration and defeat it, because there are two topics within the bill. And then the third is just generally that it's bad policy. The idea that we would provide a blanket indemnification without public comment, without working through a committee process, without anyone hearing about it beforehand and knowing what this looks like. Again, 0 public comment, 0 input, 0 process in a session that we were trying to do first things first. If indemnification of some sort's needed, it should once again be worked through the Judiciary Committee, not at 10:55 p.m. on an amendment that was written somewhere between 10 and 10:55 p.m. without anyone in the public seeing it. And I think we might be down to a small handful of people that are even watching right now. I don't think that's good governance, Mr. President. I'd urge the body to vote no.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President.
Point of
I-
order?
Yeah, I missed something jumping back from the Rules Committee to here. Was there a motion of some kind? I'm not sure where we are.
No, we're back on the bill. The Rules Committee overruled the chair, so we're back on the bill. Or excuse
Okay.
me, back on the amendment. Back on the amendment. Thank you.
So a point of order again, I heard Senator Rothfuss debating germaneness. Are we still debating germaneness, or is that a moot issue at this point?
No, the chair's been overruled, so we're back on the amendment. Just
Okay.
on the amendment itself. Senator Scott. Senator Scott, before you go, that would be your second time. Do you want your second time now?
Yes, it would be.
Go ahead, Senator Scott.
Mr. President, it goes beyond just whether it was in the title or not. The constitutional question is Article 3, Section 20, which reads, "No law shall be passed except by bill, and no bill shall be so altered or amended on its passage to either house as to change its original purpose." And I think that's the real question as to whether this does change its original purpose and voted up or voted down. But I'm afraid that if we pass the amendment and then enact it, which I think will be somewhat difficult, that it might well fail this constitutional test when it hits a court.
Thank you, Senator Kinski.
Mr. President, thank you. The Wyoming Supreme Court has said that Section 20 of Article 3 has to be read in conjunction with Section 24, which is the bill to contain only one subject. And in that regard as well, the fears of how strictly that'll be construed by the court have, at least in my 5 years here, been greatly exaggerated. The Wyoming Supreme Court has ruled that this provision must be, quote, liberally and reasonably construed. Recognizing it a strict interpretation would impede legislation to such a degree that none but a precision could successfully draft a valid amendment. The court has held that the legislature may incorporate in a single act the entire statutory law upon one general subject. Similarly, the Supreme Court has allowed the legislature to use general terms in a bill's title to express its purpose. A title may be sufficiently general and comprehensive to embrace every means and end necessary or convenient for the accomplishment of the general purpose expressed therein. And I think those first two sentences do it. They cited, for instance, one statute that simply talked about determining wages and hours for firefighters, but in fact created an entire statutory scheme for collective bargaining and mandatory arbitration that was upheld. And there are other examples of that where the court has deferred to the legislature on this. And so the rumors of the death of legislation by germaneness are greatly exaggerated, and I'd urge the body's favorable consideration.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on this amendment? Further discussion on this amendment?
Call for the question.
Seeing no further discussion, question having been called, the question is, shall the Senate adopt third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1002? All those in favor, please raise your hand.
$18.
Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand.
9.
Vote in the affirmative. Amendment number, third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1002 is adopted. We're on, I don't think there are any other amendments corrected or otherwise. Is that correct?
Yes.
Senate File, we're on the bill. Further discussion on the bill. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, speaking on and against the bill, my problem that as it came to us, the principal item in this bill was the workers' comp coverage for the COVID virus. Let me make it very clear, I am very supportive of that concept, but I have two concerns with this bill on it. First, I don't think there was adequate consideration given to coordination with other programs that cover injuries from the COVID. There was considerable talk about a new federal program that does and may well be a better deal than workers' comp for some of the employees, and I don't think that got properly vetted. Second, as it came to us, I think it put the solvency of the workers' comp fund at considerable risk by being open to being covered for using his workers' comp as a general health insurance program, which is not something we should ever do. That will bust the fund. The second reading amendment cured some of that problem. I'm not sure it cured it adequately. And I think on that issue, there is no urgency because I think a bill that was passed in a session in June or July would be just as effective because you can apparently reach back with these and make the coverage retroactive. This bill, as it comes to us, did that. So I think we'd be safer off defeating the bill and making sure this key provision is right. But the bill now has several other components. And so it's a matter of judgment. But I think we're taking a little too much risk with our workers' comp fund.
There's one more amendment, isn't there?
Point of order.
We gotta, let's hold up right there. Senator Pappas, your point of order?
Yes, I have a second amendment, a second third reading amendment for this bill. In fact, it's yours.
Wait a second, I thought it was Senator Von Flatern. So I was looking for Senator Von Flatern.
Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, it's got your name on the website.
I certainly wasn't supposed to have top billing. I guess Senator Von Flatern is not available. So let's back up. Mr. Vice President, would you take the chair so we can deal with the third reading amendment number 2 on Senate File 1002?
Can I read that in, please? Third reading amendment number 2, page 3, line 9.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1002 and ask for the appropriate number of seconds.
You have that. I'll read off on Flatern, Anderson, Landon, Nethercott, Boner, Manise, Salmi Dalton, and many more.
Thank you. Mr. Vice President, members, this was brought by Senator Von Flatern, and actually staff, it's really pretty much a technical. There's one minor but not technical. So I'll just go through this really quick. if you look, you should recognize this December 31, 2020, changing that date to December 30 of 2020. You'll see that in two different places in this amendment. We did that in the second reading amendment that we passed, Senator Von Flater's amendment, which was second reading amendment number 1. We made that change. So to be consistent internally in the bill as it's done, what you'll see that we're changing those dates to be consistent with respect to this workers' compensation issue from December 31 to December 30, which, as you all know, is the date from which the CARES Act has to be expended. And so that does that. The other thing you'll see is that's what the first couple do, and just clean that language up in and around that. On page 10, line 2, this is consistent with the language and makes it internally inconsistent. It makes it internally inconsistent with the other bills that we've been working on, these other mayor bills. And ultimately what that does is at some point, any funds that are expended in here, if they haven't been expended, or excuse me, unless authorized by House, I'm one ahead of myself. So after on page 10, line 2, after section, you insert unless authorized by 2020 House Bill 104 or Senate File 1004 if enacted into law, just providing, and then that provides no other appropriation. So what that is it limited the appropriations and changing and using the appropriations for anything else. That's what the original language does. So what this just says, it creates a caveat that dovetails into the next paragraph that says, unless it's authorized in House Bill 1004 or Senate File 1004, which, as you know, are the various grant programs that have been provided for businesses. And then you'll get to the next paragraph. What we're doing then is that on September the 15th, the governor will take a view of where we're at with expenditures in Senate File 1002. If it hasn't been used, if there's excess money, then what this does is allows him to pull it over and take it back over, bypass. So it's an exception to the general provision that's already that's in the bills as it is right now that would prevent him from doing so. It allows him to pull it over and put it into the business grant programs provided in 1004 in House Bill 1004, Senate File 1004 if they're enacted into law. So it just creates additional flexibility that any money that's not been used or hasn't been committed by September the 15th, he can pull it over and use it in those grant programs for businesses that are in House Bill 1004, Senate File 1004. So that's essentially what the bill does. The other thing that it does is that if when we get down into the in page 10, on page 10, you'll see a place where the governor can pull the trigger. And line 10, if you get to the right place. So yeah, so you can see that's the right place. So what they're doing is in any excess funds are appropriated under this section in excess of the total amount estimated by the governor, hereby reappropriated to the governor for purposes specified in House Bill 1001 or Senate File 1001 if enacted into law. And you'll see again, all you're trying to do is make sure that whatever money's not expended, the governor can push it somewhere else and use it expended. That it's a simple concept that ultimately, if it's not used in one place, December 15th, to give some time to reassess and move it around and use it somewhere else. It's either that or you would return it to the federal government. So that's what the purpose of the bill is. And again, for the most part, it's technical creations and just trying to make sure that this process is that ultimately this money gets used where it's used best. There's a priority there, but come September the 15th, the governor has additional license to make sure that the money gets used if it hasn't been already raised. So with that, I'll stand for questions. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Any questions?
Call for the question.
Question being called for. We're voting on third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1002. All in favor, raise your hand. I believe that looks unanimous. Is that right, Chief Clerk?
Tw- 28.
28. All opposed, raise your hand.
Zero.
Amendment has passed. We're back on the bill. Question being called. Senator Bebout, do you have a question?
No, sir, Mr. Vice President. I just think this is a really important bill and we ought to pass it and move it forward. And you go through the items and you can just list them off, you know, the importance of the opportunity to have the premium credit for workers' comp, what we can do for unemployment, the work share part of it, helping with rent and our tenants and our residents. And then the COVID thing for the unemployment as well and workers' comp in terms of the immunity and provide provisions there. I think it's an important bill, not the immunity, but what it does in terms of the relationship constitutionally with our employee and employers. So I think it's a great bill. And I hope we would support it. I will be voting for it.
Further comments? Further comments? Question being called. Chief Clerk will call a roll.
Agar.
Agar, aye.
I. Anderson.
Anderson, I.
I. Anselmi Dalton.
Anselmi Dalton, aye.
I. Baldwin.
Baldwin, aye.
I. Bebout.
Aye.
I. Beitman.
Aye.
I. Boner.
Aye.
I. Bouchard.
Bouchard, aye.
I. Case.
Case, no.
No. Coe.
Go, aye.
I. Dockstetter.
Dockstetter, aye.
I. Driscoll.
Driscoll, aye.
I. Ellis.
Ellis, no.
No. Peru.
Peru, aye.
I. Hicks. Hicks. I. Hicks, I. Hutchings.
Hicks, aye.
Hicks, I. Hutchings.
Hutchings, aye.
I. James.
James, aye.
I. Kinski.
Aye.
I. Cost.
Cost, aye.
I. Landon.
Aye.
I. Moniz.
Aye.
I. Nethercott.
Aye.
I. Pappas.
Aye.
I. Rothfuss.
No.
No. Schuler. I. Schuler, I. Scott.
No.
No. Steinmetz.
I.
I. Von Plater.
Aye.
I. Wasserberger, excused. President Perkins.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 1002, 25 aye, 4 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, Senate File 1002 has passed the Senate. Mr. President, would you like the chair again?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senate File 1003, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 1003, Emergency Budgeting COVID-19, an act relating to emergency budgeting for the expenses of government. sponsored by Management Council.
Thank you. We do have amendments. Will the reading clerk please read third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1003?
Third reading amendment number 1, page 5, line 13.
Thank you. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1003. This goes into section B, which deals with the governor's flex authority to be able to move up to 25.
Excuse me.
Point of order.
Oh, need a second.
Thank you. We need seconds. So we have Senator Boner, Senator Agar, Senator Driscoll, Senator Hutchins, Senator Steinmetz, and Senator Baldwin. Thank you. You're back. Senator Hicks, back to you.
Mr. President, this just goes into subsection B in the bill that gives the governor superflex authority to move up to 25% from agency to agency. And then the provision on the that was amended by the Kinski Amendment with the second portion of that restricted that they could not use any of that superflex authority to move money for any of the construction projects. This just brings in and says that if he uses flex authority, that those funds could be used for the completion of the Casper State Office Building, Wyoming Life Resource Center, and the Wyoming State Hospital. Stand for any questions.
Thank you. Is there discussion on this amendment? Is there a discussion on this amendment? You ready for the question? Senator Landon.
Mr. President, sorry to belabor at the late hour. I guess my question to the bringer of the amendment is why the state office building in Casper. I know on Management Council, we really did not, I think, consider that. Just curious. I can certainly understand the 2 healthcare facilities related to COVID monies, but maybe a little discussion on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion, any other questions for the sponsor or other discussion? Seeing none. We're back to you, Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, the reason that was included on there is that was in the letter that was sent to the governor during the session that said of the top priorities that needed to be funded. The reason that's on there is that was one of the top priorities if we are successful in using the federal funds to do the Life Resource Center and the state hospital. And we still felt it was beneficial because those are the funds they use for the state building to get the Chancery Court up and running. That's a big business component for the state of Wyoming. I think that's appropriate use of those monies. But it was in the governor's original letter of priority projects that needed to be funded. It's currently under construction.
Thank you. Thanks, Senator Hicks. The question is, shall the Senate adopt third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1003? All those in favor, please raise your hands.
$20.
Thank you. All those opposed, raise your hands.
$7.
The vote having been in affirmative, Senate file, excuse me, third reading amendment number 1 has been adopted. We're on third reading amendment number 2. Will the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
Mr. President, before I do that, I have a question. I do have a corrected copy of third reading amendment number 1.
And
Is
yes,
that so? That was the one considered.
That's the one I had in front of me. Let's go back. Let's make sure.
I apologize. I did not read it that way.
You're doing the job of three. It's late. It's been a long day for all of us. So we'll go back and make sure we've got this.
Thank
Can we
you.
just have by a show of hands, how many of you were working off corrected? Let's do it the other way. How many of you were working off a non-corrected copy? So you're working off a copy that was not corrected. Senator Von Flatern was working off.
And Senator Beitman.
And Senator Beitman. Okay. Let's go back and let's unwind. Let's just start over again, and let's go ahead and make sure we move the corrected copy. So first of all, Senator Von Flatern and Senator Beitman, do you guys have access to the corrected copy?
I do now, sir.
You do now?
Yep.
Okay, Senator Beitman, how about you? Okay.
Did I read it?
Let's just pause and it's not a particularly long amendment. Let's just give Senator Von Flatern and Senator Beitman a moment or two to review that. Just give us a thumbs up when you're okay. All right, we're okay. So let's go back and let's just for the record and clean it up. Senator Hicks, would you please move the corrected copy? Let's read the corrected copy in, Madam Chief Clerk.
Third reading amendment number 1, corrected copy, page 5, line 13.
Okay, Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, I move third reading, corrected copy, third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1003. Ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. We have Senator Bebout's a second, Senator Von Flatern's a second, Senator Baldwin, Senator Boner, Senator Steinmetz, Senator Agar, all seconds. So you heard the explanation. Let's just let Senator Hicks, is there anything you would like to add to your earlier explanation? Senator Von Flatern or Senator Beitman, do you have any questions or concerns that you would like to speak to on this bill? Senator Beitman shook his head. Senator Von Flatern got up and left. So I'll take that as a no. So, questions. So with that, is there any other question or other comment on the bill? Ready for the question. The question is, the Senate adopt third reading amendment number 1.
President.
Beg your pardon? Third reading, thank you.
Order.
Third reading amendment number 1, corrected copy to Senate File 1003. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Point of order? Is there a point of order? Did somebody have a point of order?
Mr. President, I did, and you were referring to the bill instead of the amendment.
Okay.
Slate.
Thank you. Let me restate that then. Thank you. The question is, shall the Senate adopt third reading amendment number 1, corrected copy to Senate File 1003? All those in favor, please raise your hands.
$24.
All those opposed, please raise your hands.
$3 no.
The vote in the affirmative. Third reading amendment number 1, corrected copy has been adopted. Let's go to third reading amendment number 2. Will the reading clerk please read in third reading amendment number 2?
Third reading amendment number 2, page 8, above line 1.
I do not have a corrected copy. I only have the original copy. Is there any? So Senator Schuler or Senator Kinski, is this the one we're working from?
Let me look real quick. Mr. President, I don't show that there is a corrected copy of this amendment.
No, I'm making sure there's not a corrected copy. So I'm
Mr.
asking the sponsors if this is the correct copy that we're
This-
working from on the
This is,
amendment.
Mr. President, is the correct copy.
All right, so thank you. Let's read that in, Chief Clerk.
Third reading amendment number 2, page 8, above line 1.
Thank you. Senator Schuler. Please unmute Senator Schuler.
Hard time. Am I on now?
Yes, now you're on.
Before I read the amendment in, I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. I've been getting kicked off here fairly recently. I think every kid in my neighborhood must be doing their homework tonight. So if I get kicked off in the middle of this, the great senator from Sheridan, he knows what we're doing. So anyway, thank you, President Perkins. I would move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1003 and ask for seconds.
Senator Von Flatern is a second, Senator Bebout's a second, Senator Costa is a second, Senator Kinski's a second, Senator Anselmi Dalton's a second, Senator Boner's a second. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment really is not a huge amendment, but I think it's important to the bill. If you take a look at the Bebout second reading amendment, we're going to delete on page 8, the reduction shall be made in an amount necessary to meet the purposes specified in subsection of this section. And we're going to insert, if the governor makes a reduction under the subsection, the reduction may be made in an amount to meet the following goals as prioritized by the governor. Little I, to meet the purposes specified in subsection B of this section, and Romanet number 2, which I think is the most important part of the amendment, to continue to allow each school district to be able to provide classroom instruction in compliance with state educational requirements while reducing unnecessary administrative funding. So I think the bottom line is it provides some local control. It keeps the classroom instruction as the priority. It's still aligning with our state requirements, and it also reduces unnecessary administrative fundings. With that, I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. On the amendment, further discussion on the amendment, Senator Landon.
Just a curiosity to the bringers of the amendment. In subparagraph 2I, to continue to allow the classroom teaching instruction, I understand that. I'm right with you. And if the governor is going to go into the block grant and make reductions, my only question was regarding why limit the reductions that are possible to only the administrative funding. That seems a little restrictive on that side of things, and I was just curious why it was written that way.
Thank you. Other questions for Senator Kinski?
That's an excellent question to my colleague from Casper. We had something earlier written which was much more densely technical. And then we settled on something that just kind of captured the spirit of the second reading discussion, since we're not actually mandating exactly how the governor's got to go about it, rather than starting to calling out various elements of the block grant and the funding model. We simply said, we'd appreciate it if you would prioritize and protect the classroom teacher and look to other elements of the model first. So it's a non-technical expression of let's protect the classroom teacher. And we thought this was enough to communicate clearly to the governor what our intention was. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Still on the amendment, further discussion. Further discussion. Question having been called, and there appearing to be no further discussion. The question is, shall Senate adopt third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1003? All those in favor, please raise your hand.
(24)
All those opposed, please raise your hand.
3.
The voting having been in the affirmative, so the third reading amendment number 2 is adopted. We are back. I don't have any other amendments for 1003. Are there any other amendments that I'm unaware of or that I'm missing? There's appearing to be none. We're back on the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? We're on the bill. Any discussion on the bill? Any discussion on the bill? Ready for the question? The question is, Senate File 1003, having been read 3 separate times, shall 1003 pass the Senate? Will the Chief Clerk please call the roll?
Agar?
Agar, aye.
I. Anderson?
Anderson, I.
I. Anselmi Dalton?
Anselmi Dalton, aye.
I. Baldwin?
Baldwin, aye.
I. Ebout?
About aye.
I. Beitman?
Aye.
I. Boner?
Aye.
I. Bouchard?
Bouchard, aye.
I. Case?
Case, no.
Case, no. Coe?
Go, aye.
I. Dockstetter?
Hochstetter, aye.
I. Driscoll?
Driscoll, aye.
I. Ellis?
Aye.
I. Guru?
Guru, aye.
I. Hicks?
Hicks, aye.
I. Hutchings? I. James?
James, aye.
I. Kinski?
Aye.
I. Cost?
Cost, aye.
I. Landon?
Aye.
I. Moniz?
Aye.
I. Nethercott?
Aye.
I. Pappas?
Aye.
I. Rothfuss?
No.
No. Schuler? I. Scott?
Aye.
I. Steinmetz?
Aye.
I. Von Plater?
No.
Von Plater, no. Wasserberger excused. President Perkins?
Aye.
Perkins, aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 1003, 27 aye, 2 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 1003, having received the affirmative vote of a majority of those elected to the Senate, Senate File 1003 has passed the Senate. Senate File 1004 for third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 1004, COVID-19 Business Relief Programs 2, an act relating to the emergency expenses of government related to business relief, sponsored by Minerals.
Thank you. There are amendments. Will the reading clerk please read third reading amendment number 1?
Third reading amendment number 1, page 5, line 16.
Thank you. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I would move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1004.
Thank you. Are there seconds? Senator Bebout's a second. Senator Boner's a second. Senator Kinski's a second. Senator Baldwin's a second. Senator Anselmi Dalton's a second. Senator Schuler's a second. Thank you. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, this, or Mr. President, this simply states the obvious that the committee wanted to have done, and that is that this would be for a nonprofit businesses. And we've discussed this earlier, and I just want to make it official that it's for nonprofit businesses only.
For profit.
I think you said that backwards, Senator.
Oh, excuse me, for profit businesses, excuse me.
Okay. Thank you. There's discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is, in a lot of communities around Wyoming, this ignores a very large piece of the economy of folks that are shoulder to shoulder, providing educational services, provided needed relief. And I think we've gone down a rat hole on this, Mr. President. People are worried about advocacy organizations and religious groups, and that's not at all what we're talking about. We're talking about organizations that are organized as a business entity in terms of a corporation under Wyoming corporate laws or the corporate laws of another state, and enjoy a tax-free status for certain types of taxes, not all of them. I might point that out. They're serving our communities. They're employing our people. These types of entities employ hundreds of people in my community, Mr. President. They're hit as hard as I am, some of them even harder. And I hope the Senate won't exclude them from participating. There's lots of opportunity for rulemaking and to get input into how this money should be done. But I assure you that I've talked to folks in the agency that have been developing the guidelines for these programs, and they have been absolutely under the assumption that nonprofit corporations would apply. This would apply to nonprofit corporations. I urge your rejection of this amendment. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think you're muted.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment. Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Bebout.
Very quickly, Mr. President, and thank you. And in support of the amendment, and just a question when you get the chance for the chairman of minerals to maybe go a little further in some of the discussion they had and all the discussion and thoughts I've heard and what I've heard, at least from my community, is talked about for-profit businesses. Well, none of the businesses are making any money, but it was those kind of businesses, and nonprofits was never anything that I had heard from or saw it. I realize that now that I've read about some in the paper, they're out there, but I think the true intent of this is for profit businesses. So I would ask you to support the amendment.
Thank you. Senator, I think Senator Nethercott I saw her next. Senator Nethercott, you still wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just reiterate what I had said earlier in the day, but to remind the body of the importance of these nonprofits that are serving a purpose, a significant purpose, and they employ a significant number of people. There are hundreds of registered nonprofits here in Laramie County filed through the Secretary of State's office that are performing a number of business services. So there's a number of consulting businesses associated with serving businesses through the nonprofit network. Again, these entities serve our constituents in a way that the state and our local subdivisions cannot. They employ a significant number of people in our communities, and those employees own homes and pay taxes and participate and contribute to the tax base as employed contributing members of our communities. And so I would urge your support of this and recognize that the history of these programs and how the council has administered them in the past and how they intend to in the future is to allow for this diversity and providing this support to all of our productive members of our communities.
Thank you, Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, this is, I guess my fundamental problem here is I don't understand why we're left with this Hobson's choice. I think we all know how important our nonprofits are. We all know the impact they have in our communities. We all know the great contribution they're making. What I don't understand is why we're pitting the business and what the Management Council said, and first things first was to help our businesses get back on their feet. I don't believe, and I'll be the first one to stand with anyone in the body to work as hard as we can to work on a funding package that involves our nonprofits, that it's well thought out, that has a set of rules and regulations to make sure that it's getting to the right nonprofits and that we're getting the people we want to get to. I do not believe that this is the only choice we have. And as a matter of fact, I will not believe it, that this is the only way we can fund our nonprofits is to pit them against small for-profit businesses. So that's my pitch, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. I think great debate and some some spot on comments by my colleagues. I just wanted to throw out that the co-chairman of corporations and myself have on the agenda for the June meeting the opportunity to discuss this nonprofit element. I think it could easily, I think it was suggested earlier today that it could easily have its own place. Appreciated the senator from Teton County. I think that's something that he might have brought up. I think it does deserve our attention for all the things that our Laramie County Senator, our Fremont County Senator, they did a great job of outlining why I think we need to give some attention to this. That's why I worked today, earlier in the day, to get it on an agenda for next month. That could be a second thing. Second, meanwhile, we could support the for-profit business model in this piece of legislation. So I just wanted to let the body know that we're going to take it up in corporations.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Further discussion? Further discussion? Senator, anyone before Senator Anderson takes a second time? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on and against the amendment, and I understand the concerns and the interests, excuse me, of trying to ensure that we're taking care of our for-profit corporations. But I'll reiterate what I said before, was it's not really just about the corporations and making sure that the owners of the corporations are profiting or staying in business is the case, which is right now, is more likely. It's also about the people that are the employees in these businesses. And nonprofits around the state employ an awful lot of employees that are struggling right now as well. So when the nonprofit businesses go out of business and they have to shutter up, that just means that you end up with individuals that are unemployed and don't have any support. So as we're trying to extend resources to these businesses around the state, we have to recognize that we're trying to stabilize these businesses such that we don't lead to additional unemployment and the peoples in our communities being unable to work and not accomplish the missions of many of these not-for-profit corporations. So it does seem to me that we probably need to do a little bit of work perhaps with regard to the nonprofits, and maybe we can rein that in a little bit. But the idea that we would eliminate them from this and wait until second thing second to challenge them to struggle to survive for several more weeks without additional resources. And then I don't know what, they have to come back from bankruptcy or come back from being shut down and firing all their employees. If we can sustain them for a while and then use the second thing second to maybe focus the program better and more appropriately, I think that would be a more effective solution, would protect our workers, our employees around the state, and our not-for-profit businesses. So I'm going to be against this amendment. I hope the body will as well.
Thank you. Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we got to kind of prioritize where this money goes. Making it where the money goes for profit. That's where our tax revenue goes. Where our tax revenue comes from to make sure that to feed the government, and then the for-profit companies also donate to the nonprofits as well. So if we make sure those for-profit companies are up and running, that's what will bring in the tax revenue to make sure the government is able to keep running, to make sure everything's able to keep going. So I think that's where the money should be going. It'll make sure that people are employed, and that's where the priority, make sure the companies are up and going and the people are paid. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, I just don't think we can think about nonprofits in one particular way. One nonprofit that I really support and comes to mind, their whole mission is to provide job training to single mothers. Another nonprofit, they are feeding workers who are laid off from their jobs. And so when we think about how we're going to rebuild our communities, we can't think about it just in terms of the for-profit corporations, because there are some nonprofits that really do support and fit in the mission of job creation and job stability. So I think we're just doing ourselves a huge disservice by assuming that, nonprofits don't add value to our economy.
Thank you. Senator Hutchings.
Just one last point. I agree with those who are on and for against this amendment. Nonprofits were forced to close down as well, and many employees were laid off and lost revenue as well. Such a vital part of our community. I agree with Senator, the good senator from Laramie County as well, with the organizations I know she's talking about. We've got to include our nonprofits in this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks, Senator Ellis. Further discussion? Are we ready for the question?
Senator Case.
Senator Case.
Thanks, Mr. President. It's really hard to hold my fingers like that. I'm glad you finally called on me. Mr. President, I have a conflict on this overall bill, but I'm going to vote against this amendment. And I don't think I have it's true, I have a for-profit business, but I'm not making a profit. But that doesn't make me a nonprofit, Mr. President. So I don't think I have a conflict in voting against this amendment. And I intend to do so because it is of vital importance to the many nonprofits in my community that aren't doing advocacy, that are providing education, that are protecting people's lives and providing training and food. And so I'm going to vote against this amendment, and I don't have a conflict on the amendment.
Senator Coe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to give an example, and everybody's going to say he's going to talk about that little museum up here in Cody. And I can tell you that we employ almost 100 people full-time year-round. We run about 250,000 people a year through there. We bring in kids from all over the state through a program that we do with Sinclair Oil. And we bring about 4,000 or 5,000 kids a year into our institution, supported by this program that we have. I can tell you that this operation up here is an economic driver, not only for Cody and Park County, it's an economic driver for the state of Wyoming. We know that some 30 to 35% of the people come just to come see what we're doing and see our 5 museums under one roof. And we're a nonprofit. We're a 501c3, but we're an educational institution. That's our primary driver that makes us do what we do. We have to be educational in nature, and that's our mission. So nonprofits, I don't think need to be treated differently. It's the real thing. And I can tell you, we are so dependent upon people going through the front door. We're just struggling. I mean, it's a struggle right now. And we don't have any idea what the summer season is going to be like. It's just awful. And so to say that nonprofits don't contribute is just wrong. And I would allude to what the good senator from Lander talked about. Nonprofits make a contribution, huge contribution, to the economy of Wyoming, whether it's in the arts or from an educational standpoint. And with that, Mr. President, I'd ask that you defeat this amendment.
Thank you. Senator Bebout.
Thank you, Mr. President. Everything that's been said about the importance of nonprofits is true. There's no question about that, and the people that they employ and what they do. One of the things that I don't understand is why the profit businesses were able to do the PPP, and as I understand it, nonprofits were not. So is there something that might not be out there that I'm missing on the COVID or related funds relative to nonprofits? I don't know if there is or isn't, but that's one of the concerns I have. The other is what you're really doing, and I like what my colleague from Casper is talking about with corporations to see that we do it right. And I don't think it's appropriate that you pit against the nonprofits against the profits to try to go after a limited number of funds. So you go to the business council and you have 10 applications and 5 are nonprofit and 5 are for profit, and you've only got enough money to fund 5. And I worry about how that will shake out. So I think you ought to look at nonprofits. I'm not sure this is the place to do it. So I still think it's we ought to stand by and support the amendment. Let's do it right for the nonprofits. Let's find out why they didn't qualify for the PPP if they didn't. Is it something with COVID related to the Treasury rules, or is there something else we might be missing? And if they don't want to do it for the nonprofits for PPP, maybe they wouldn't want to do it for this as well. So there's still some unanswered questions, and I don't want to jeopardize this for the profits just because we want to do something that may in fact be what we regret later. Thank you.
Thank you. We're still on the amendment. Is there further discussion? Anyone before Senator Anderson takes his second and final time? Senator Office.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my understanding that the Paycheck Protection Act actually provided $349 billion in forgivable loans to nonprofits, among other business entities. So the PPP actually did engage with the nonprofits, as this legislation would do without the amendment. I'm not saying we shouldn't refine this in the future, but again, the idea that we would just cut loose nonprofits entirely until we come up with a solution seems draconian. Particularly the idea that the third provision of this bill really is just to reimburse entities for their COVID-19 related costs. Nonprofits certainly have those costs also, and we need to be addressing those in the same way that we would for-profit corporations. Again, maybe we need to work on this and second things second, but the idea that we pull the rug out from under them right now, I think is unacceptable, and I hope the body will reject this amendment.
Thank you. Anyone before Senator Anderson takes his second time? Senator Dockstader.
In support of Senator Anderson, I see where he's coming from, trying to support the main businesses. We will take care of it. Second thing seconds. There'll be a time for it. Now is not the time. In support of Senator Anderson's amendment.
Thank you, Senator Dockstader. Anyone else before Senator Anderson takes his second time? Seeing none. Senator Anderson, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some good discussion there. A couple things hit me though. My nonprofits that I support in Wyoming are right now making a lot of calls and doing a lot of work on trying to get their donor base to fund them. That's one thing the for-profit businesses cannot do. They cannot go back to their donor base and get money. So there's a big difference there when we talk about these nonprofits that just have been hit hard. They've been hit hard because they're not working their donor base, and the difference for the for-profit business, they can't do that. They don't have a donor base to go to. So that's one of the big distinctions here. I agree that we do need to have a bill for the nonprofits. That's an entirely different animal. We started talking about that in the committee with one nonprofit that came from Lander, and we found out that there's a multitude of different 501c3, 506, 50, and it just got out of hand real quick, and we were not prepared to bring all that on board or to work it. So we said we've got to do something different with this, and it needs its own bill. So I think it's a second tier bill that needs to be brought and handled correctly. This is not handling it correctly if we say we're leaving it in this bill. I ask for your favorable vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Ayes and nays.
Ayes and those haven't been called. Will the chief clerk call the roll? You're on mute, Ellen.
Hagar,
Hagar, I.
I. Anderson,
Anderson, I.
I. Anselmi Dalton,
Aye.
I. Baldwin,
Baldwin.
conflict,
Baldwin conflict.
Bebout,
Aye.
I. Beitman,
Aye.
I. Boner,
No.
no. Bouchard,
Aye.
I. Case conflict,
No. Cases,
case is conflict to no. Coe,
No.
no. Dockstetter,
Dockstetter, aye.
I. Driscoll,
Driscoll, no.
Driscoll conflict to no. Ellis,
Ellis, no.
no. Guru,
Baru, aye.
I. Hicks,
Hicks, aye.
I. Hutchings,
Hutchings, no.
no. James,
James, aye.
I. Kinski,
Aye.
I. Cost,
Us, no.
no. Landon,
No.
no. Moniz,
Aye.
I. Nethercott,
No.
no. Pappas,
No.
no. Rothfuss,
No.
no. Schuler, Scott, oh, Schuler,
Schuler, she's,
No,
her sound's
Schuler's-
not coming through. She's saying no. I can read her lips. She's
No.
also giving a thumbs down sign. She's a
Schuler,
no.
no. Scott,
No.
no. Steinmetz,
Aye.
I. Von Flatern,
No.
no. Wasserberger, excuse. Perkins,
Aye.
aye. Closing vote.
Baldwin conflict and no.
Baldwin, conflict to no. Thank you. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. 14 aye, 15 no, 1 excused.
Vote being in the negative, House third reading amendment number 1 has not been adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, my clock shows 11:57. We need to, if I could, what my hope would be, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that you would make a motion that we adjourn for until tomorrow at 12:05 a.m. That will give us about a 5-minute chance to stretch our legs. It's just a matter, it's a technicality. We need to gavel out and gavel back in as a legislative day. So if we, I hope that's what will happen. So with that, it's now 11:58. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I understand you, then we're going to make a motion we adjourn for today, at least for this 15th day of May.
Until
12:05 a.m., May 16th.
Which is 5 minutes from now.
You want 10 minutes, Mr. President?
Whatever, you're the Majority Floor Leader, you can do whatever you want, Mr.
My attitude, I'd like to keep working, but we'll go 10 minutes.
Well, you're the Majority Floor Leader, 10 minutes. The motion is that we recess until, we adjourn. Thank you. All those in favor of the
Mr. President,
yes?
excuse me. I don't know if this is the appropriate time for, I guess, just a point of order, or I guess that's what I would call that last count. It was 14 aye and 15 no. Was that correct in the numbers? I just wanted to clarify that. I think you said it didn't pass, but I thought it would pass with 15 no's.
It was, I
No,
think
it
the
failed.
count was 14 ayes and 15 noes with 1 excused.
It failed.
It failed.
Thank you, sir. My bad. It's late. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, raise your hand. Thank you.
It's unanimous.
It's unanimous. Senate stands in recess until 12:10 a.m. 10 minutes from
Actually
now.
adjourned, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
Stands adjourned until 12:10 a.m. See you in 10 minutes. Senate will come to order. Do we have to do roll calls and pledge of allegiance right now?
We should do a roll call, Mr. President.
We have a motion to lay back the pledge of allegiance and the invocation until we come back or later today.
After a recess.
And we'll, absent objection. Is there any objection to that? Is there any objection to that? There being none. We're back on third reading amendments to Senate File 1004. We're on third reading amendment number 2. Will the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
Mr. President, you did not want to take roll call?
Okay, let's go ahead and do the roll call. We better make sure we have everybody here.
Roll call for Saturday, May 16th. Agar?
Agar present.
Present. Anderson?
Anderson here.
Anderson here. And Anselmi Dalton?
Anselmi Dalton here.
Present. Baldwin?
Baldwin mostly here.
Present. Bebout?
Bebout here.
Present. Beitman?
Here.
Boner?
Here.
Bouchard?
Here.
Case?
Case present.
Coe?
Co-here, sort of.
Dockstetter?
Dockstetter here.
Driscoll?
Driscoll here.
Ellis?
Ellis present.
Guru?
Drew, present.
Hicks?
Kind of.
Hutchings?
She's here in the chamber. I can see her. She's here.
Present. James?
James here.
Present. Kinski?
Here.
Cost?
Us here.
Landon?
Here.
Moniz?
Here.
Nethercott?
Here.
Pappas?
Here.
Rothfuss?
Here.
Schuler? Scott?
Here.
Steinmetz?
Here.
Von Plater?
Here.
Wasserberger excused. President Perkins?
Present.
29 present.
Thank you. Now we're back in third reading amendments to Senate File 1004. Will the reading clerk please read in third reading amendment number 2?
Third reading amendment number 2, page 6, line 14.
Thank you, Senator Kinski.
Mr. President, I would move for third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1004 and ask for appropriate number of seconds.
You have Senator Boner, Senator Beitman, Senator Baldwin, Senator Koss, Senator Hutchins, Senator Agar, Senator Steinmetz. Go ahead, Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very simple amendment. As you know, the bill directs relief to certain businesses that were required to close, which is defined as a closure that was ordered by the state or local government. And it further says a required closure includes interruption of a business's normal business as a result of closures or public health orders. And this simply adds, or as a result of the public health crisis with respect to COVID-19. And it's intended to pick up businesses that were either partially ordered to close or allowed to partially reopen, or never actually received an order, but were impacted by the crisis because of the nationwide shutdown and withdrawal of business. And I urge the body's favorable consideration.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, are we ready for the question? Question is the adoption of third reading amendment number 2. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
26,
Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand.
one.
One. Voted in the affirmative. Third reading amendment number 2 has been adopted. We are on third reading amendment number 3. Please read in the amendment.
Third reading amendment number 3, page 24, after line 19.
Thank you, Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 1004 and ask for your favorable consideration. Fellow senators, this
Point of
is
order.
just-
Thank you.
Point of order.
Restrict your seconds.
Oh, I need my second.
Thank you. Seconds are Senator Bebout, Senator Boner, Senator Agar, Senator Beitman, Senator Kinski, Senator Hutchings. Go ahead, Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President. Mr. President, sorry to interrupt. I think we've got a few mics on. There's a feedback that we're hearing.
Thank you. Let's check. Here, I can let's start. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Senator Steinmetz, and go again.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. So I just wanted to do a little bit of a cleanup on the amendment we passed on the second reading. This basically just on page 24 after line 19 of that amendment. Just
Senator Steinmetz, you muted on us.
Excuse me, good morning. I'm still muted, unmuted now. Okay, we'll try this again. I need a little coffee here. So this amendment is on page 24, line 19, and it has to do with the amendment, the last amendment I brought. All it does is hook it back to section 2 and just does a little cleanup. It's nothing substantial, just a little to make our statutes read better. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions on third reading amendment number 3? Any discussion? Are you ready for the question?
Question?
Question having been called, there being no further discussion. All those in favor of the adoption of third reading amendment number 3, please raise your hands.
Twenty-seven.
Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your hands. I see none.
Senator Hutchings, was that a no?
No, Senator Hutchings was an aye.
There's something blocking her camera. I'm unable to see when she votes. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't see any no votes. Certainly the voting is vast majority was in the affirmative. The amendment is adopted. We are on third reading amendment number 4. Will the Chief Clerk please read in the amendment?
Third reading amendment number 4, page 18, lines 1 through 3.
Thank you, Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 1004 and ask for your favorable consideration. And
thank you. We have seconds are Senator Bebout, Senator Steinmetz, Senator Boner, Senator Agar, Senator Baldwin, and Senator Kinski. Thank you. Go ahead, Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. What my amendment does is in the Rothfuss amendment that just passed yesterday, to remove the stipulation that I guess the easiest thing to do would be to look at the Rothfuss amendment, and this deletes lines 31 and 32 on page 1 of that amendment, which is the paragraph D on March 31, 2020 had employed 100 full-time employees or less. So what my amendment does is allows companies of all sizes to participate in this particular tranche of money. Otherwise, the only thing they would be entitled to is some reimbursement for COVID-related expenses such as personal protective equipment, face masks, and the like. That's basically the gist of the amendment, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Is there discussion on this amendment? We're on amendment number 4, discussion, Senator Case.
Mr. President, what does independently owned and operated mean?
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, when we discussed this in Minerals Committee and also discussions with the Business Council, it does go back to that discussion earlier today of whether it is an owned subsidiary of some other corporation or whether it is an independent corporation that has its entire day-to-day management based on the ownership or the managers or operators. So it gets away from subsidiaries as its primary objective. And this language is taken from other Wyoming Business Council program language. I almost wish we hadn't because it's caused confusion clearly, but that is where it came from. And since this was Business Council administered, it was just cloned language for that purpose. That's what our understanding of it is.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Further discussion on the amendment? There being none.
Mr. President.
Senator Case.
Mr. President, and you could have a Wyoming corporation formed by Wyoming people, totally owned by Wyoming people. They have a subsidiary corporation that owns the business, and they would not qualify.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just to confirm what was just said, that is typically a tax structure that would be, or a structure to be set up, maybe for liability purposes or even for name purposes. One company can be named under a trademark name and yet owned by a corporation. Nothing nefarious going on, just for instance, maybe a trademark on one side and owned by a corporation on the other. So there's stuff like that happens. What do you do when you people are going to slip through the cracks on something like that?
Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. President. It'd be for my second time. If anybody else wanted to go before me, they're certainly welcome to.
Anyone else wants to speak on this amendment? Anyone else wants to speak on this amendment for a first time? Thank you, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to address 2 points. The first is that this is independently owned and operated, semicolon, and I just wanted to be clear, that's in both versions. So that I wouldn't encourage anyone to be voting for or against this amendment based on the existence of that language, because those points A, B, and C are identical. The only difference that is provided in this amendment, as I understand it, and I just have the sponsor confirm on his final discussion, is that there would be currently a D sub point, which says that you have to have not more than 100 full-time employees. And this simply removes that D sub point. And honestly, that's a voted up or voted down. The way it was structured out of Minerals Committee was, let's try and focus this on at least moderate size or smaller corporations. And this is full-time employees is the way it's currently written. So part-time employees wouldn't count towards that total or seasonal or anything else. But it is a restriction, and this amendment removes that restriction. So I'm honestly probably fine either way. I guess voted up or voted down, but I wanted to be clear on the fact that the B is not a policy decision here.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Senator Beitman for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the good senator from over the hill for touching on that. I think the time to debate the previous language that I copied from the Rothfuss amendment was yesterday. All I'm doing is deleting the subparagraph D, which is the stipulation that it has to be less than 100 employees. That's what this amendment's about. I encourage your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor, the question having been called and discussion concluded, all those in favor of the motion to adopt third reading amendment number 4, please raise your hands.
$18.
Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hands.
$7.
The vote having been in the affirmative, third reading amendment number 4 is adopted. Third reading amendment number 5. Will the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
Third reading amendment number 5, page 18, lines 1 through 3.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 5 to Senate File 1004 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. C. Seconds, we're looking for seconds. Senator Kinski, Senator Bebout, Senator Baldwin, Senator Agar, Senator Steinmetz, Senator Hutchings. Go ahead, Senator Beitman.
All right, thanks, Mr. President. This amendment deals with the stipulation that this is, I'm on, just if you're following along on the previous, the Rothfuss amendment on second reading, this is on page 2, lines 16 through 20, Romanet 3. This deletes that. It says no stipend shall be awarded under this section without the applicant first submitting an expenditure plan on a simple form provided by the council. The council may request that application provide any additional information necessary to determine the adequacy of the applicant's submitted plan. So I'm deleting that language with this. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Discussion. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against this amendment, the concept here was a very brief expenditure plan on a simple form provided by the council, and the idea being that as part of the request for funds of up to $300,000, you would simply lay out a very brief, this is how we would intend to spend those funds. To be clear, there's really no follow-up that you did spend the funds consistent with that. So it's not very draconian, but the idea there is just to ensure that as you're looking at doling out up to $300,000, you see an intent to the expenditure of those dollars that would be consistent with business development in Wyoming. And it's an upfront check to ensure that these dollars are being appropriately utilized consistent with COVID allowable expenditures. Not very onerous, but helps to ensure that the funds are going where they need to go.
Thank you. Senator Nethercott.
On and against the amendment, the requirement to have them have a plan for how they're going to use $300,000 of free money is reasonable. And I think meets our requirements of doing at least some level of due diligence. So I think it's quite all right. And the sophisticated parties who will be asking and seeking these funds can certainly fill out with ease a one-page form that they intend to use it for payroll or business supplies or whatever that might be. But at least we have some type of affirmation from them that that really is their intent. And I think that will go a long way. I don't think it's onerous. I think it's reasonable.
Thanks, Senator Nethercott. Senator Bebout.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. One of the concerns I have, if you really don't have some level of accountability and the feds come in to audit, and certainly that they may find out that it's not valid in the way we're dispersing these funds. So a little protection, I think, may go a long ways. And I'm not sure what's wrong with asking them to have a form, a letter that says, here's how we're going to use the money, rather than just say, give me the money and walk out the door. So you need to have a little bit of level of accountability and responsibility. And I think it may protect us in the long run. So on and against the amendment.
Thank you. Further discussion, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Along those lines, I just tucked in a 6-year-old child a couple hours ago, and I just think we need to be mindful that this money is coming from somewhere. And if not this generation, then hers, and if not hers, then her children's. And the notion that we would just hand that out today and not even ask about where it's going, I just don't think that's responsible.
Thanks, Senator Ellis. Further discussion. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, on and against the amendment, I think we need that accountability also, if not for the COVID requirements, at least for the legislative requirements, and the state of Wyoming for their responsibility. On and against the amendment.
Thank you.
Question.
Are we ready for the question? Senator Beitman, you wish to speak again?
Sir, just real quick. This isn't the only protection in the bill. There's plenty of other protections. I just see this as too prescriptive and too overlording with the people's money that we need to disperse to them. This does not belong to us. It is not our job to babysit this, and we need to get on with it. So there's plenty of other protections in here. This simply just, to me, seemed like something that could be done in rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Question is, shall Senate adopt the Fifth Amendment, third reading? Thank you. All those in favor, raise your hands.
Seven.
All those opposed, raise your hands.
$19.
Motion is in the negative. The vote is in the negative. The motion has failed. The amendment is not adopted. We're on third reading amendment number 6. Will the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
Third reading amendment number 6, page 18, lines 1 through 3.
Thank you. Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading number 6 to Senate File 1004 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Seconds are Senator Boner, Senator Bebout, Senator Baldwin, Senator Agar, Senator Kinski, Senator Hutchings. Go ahead, Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment takes out the section that talks about how these businesses are supposed to spend their money. This is on page 2 of the Rothfuss Amendment, lines 22 through 40, Romanet 4. It goes on to say how they, for payroll, business supplies, business equipment, other expenses. I think this is just us telling businesses how to utilize this grant money. Grant's a grant, and it should be used how the business sees fit. It is the taxpayers' money coming back to them after all. And this wouldn't be happening if not for actions of the government and not the business owners.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, on and against the amendment for the same reasons as last time, effectively providing some oversight, ensuring that the expenditures are consistent with COVID-related expenses. That is our mission, consistent with the way these funds are to be dispersed. It's true, it's taxpayer money, but that means that it's even more of a fiduciary obligation on us to ensure that those taxpayer funds are utilized correctly as intended through the program, through the CARES Act. So you see that these are not overly restrictive as far as the limitations. It's expenses associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, to include payroll costs, business supplies, business equipment, other business expenses, including but not limited to rent, mortgage, utilities, and other operational costs. And then the E provision is any other expenditure or expense related to business interruption due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The other thing that is removed by this isn't just that, but kind of some conforming language a little later about when you're reporting back to the council about the expenditures. Part of that reporting requirement is to show that you have spent the funds consistent with these requirements in Romanet 4. So you'd be taking that away as well, which basically just means that they can spend it more or less however they want. And I don't think that's what we want from this program. We want to make sure that it's towards business investment in the state of Wyoming.
Thank you, Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I'm not mistaken, if you could show me where, but I believe the CARES Act is telling the government how to spend this money. It's not telling the people or small businesses how to spend the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I recall, on the last amendment, there was discussion in the negative about, or in the positive about having the businesses write down what they're going to spend the money on. And that was not onerous. That was something very positive. Now we're saying we want to tell the businesses what to spend it on. I'm just wondering if that's what I'm hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, the CARES Act has stipulations with it. Congress didn't just hand out the money to freewheel by the states. It is intended to compensate for the losses associated with the pandemic and the recession that is now to hit. It is meant to compensate for the loss. And so there are stipulations that are very clear. There were three primary purposes. It actually is supposed to go to an actual expense incurred. And so if the business can't show that, they probably shouldn't get the money. So you've heard that dance around the whole time. You've heard the good senator from Bates Creek mention his concerns about this. You've heard the tall senator from Fremont County, our former president, talk about this issue with great concern when there was a question about just why don't we give it all directly to the people? Because it would be unlawful. And we did not accept that money under those terms. We are under a binding agreement with Congress in order to receive that $1.25 billion. We could have rejected it, but we didn't. We took it for our people. And that also means we have to honor those obligations. Those guidelines are coming out from the U.S. Treasury. The good senator from Sweetwater County, you can look those up. Those are changing all the time. In the event we violate some of those stipulations, we have to give it back. That's what's at risk. So yes, these businesses who take the money need to expend it to have their businesses recover as a result of the pandemic. It's very clear.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion before Senator Beitman takes his second time? Is there anyone else? Senator Beitman for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. To address the last comment, on page 12 of the bill, again, it talks already about what this program is created for, what the Business Council shall do, establish and administer the program for the purpose of providing now grants or stipends to eligible businesses impacted by COVID-19. My amendment does not change that. So that's it's kind of a red herring there. So again, vote it up, vote it down. It's late. You guys are getting cranky. I'm getting cranky. Let's vote.
Thank you. The crankiness having been called, all those in favor of adopting 30 Amendment number 6, raise your hands.
Seven.
All those opposed, raise your hands. Vote in the negative, the amendment has failed. We are on third reading amendment number 7. Will the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
Third reading amendment number 7, page 18, lines 1 through 3.
Thank you. Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will withdraw without objection, third reading amendment number 7.
That objection is withdrawn. We are back on the bill. Is there discussion on the bill? Discussion on the bill. I'm hearing question having been called, seeing no discussion. The question is, having been read 3 separate times, shall Senate File 1004 pass the Senate? Will the chief clerk please call the roll?
Agar,
Agar, aye.
I. Anderson,
Anderson, aye.
I. Anselmi Dalton,
Anselmi Dalton, aye.
I. Baldwin Conflict,
Correct.
correct. Bebout,
Aye.
I. Beitman,
Aye.
I. Boner,
Aye.
I. Bouchard,
Aye.
I. Case Conflict,
Correct.
Co.
Co, aye.
I. Docksetter,
Dockstader, aye.
I. Driscoll Conflict,
Yes.
Ellis,
Aye.
I. Guru,
Aye.
I. Hicks,
Aye.
I. Hutchings,
Aye.
I. James,
Aye.
I. Kinsky,
Aye.
I. Cost,
Last time.
I. Landon,
Aye.
I. Moniz,
Aye.
I. Nethercott,
Aye.
I. Pappas,
Aye.
I. Rothfuss,
Aye.
I. Schuler,
Aye.
I. Scott,
Aye.
I. Steinmetz,
Aye.
I. Von Flatern, Von Flatern,
Aye.
I. Wasserberger, excuse President Perkins.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 1004, 26 aye, 1 excused, 3 conflict.
Senate File 1005, having received the majority vote of the members elected to the Senate, has passed.
Mr. President,
Mr. President,
Excuse
Mr.
me,
President, point of order.
1004.
Yes, thank you.
Start over again. Senate File 1004, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of those elected to the Senate, Senate File 1004 has passed the Senate. We're on to Senate File 1005, third reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 1005, Coronavirus Immunity Provisions, an act relating to civil procedure, sponsored by Senator Kinsky.
Thank you. Just as an FYI, members, this Senate file was not adopted, has not passed. It has not passed the House. And so it will, under the rules, it will be referred to Rules Committee when it hits the House. Just an FYI. So with that, Senate File 1005, third reading of the Senate file. Chief Clerk, you're muted.
Sorry. There are amendments, Mr. President?
There are. Have we read it? Have we already read the third reading of the Senate file?
Oh, I read it to myself, I think. Senate File 1005, Coronavirus Immunity Provisions, an act relating to civil procedure, sponsored by Senator Kinsky.
Thank you. There are amendments. Will the reading clerk please read third reading amendment number 1?
Third reading amendment number 1, page 3, line 10.
Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. This time I would like to withdraw amendment number 1 to Senate File 10. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1005.
Thank you. Will the reading clerk please read third reading amendment number 2?
Third reading amendment number 2, delete the.
Thank you. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President, I will withdraw second reading amendment, third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1005.
That objection is withdrawn. Third reading amendment number 3. Will the reading clerk please read the amendment?
Third reading amendment number 3, page 2, line 13.
Thank you. Senator Von Flatern.
Sorry about that, but Mr. President, without objection, I'd like to withdraw reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 1005.
Thank you. Without objection, it is withdrawn. Third reading amendment number 4.
Third reading
Amendment number 4. Yes.
Third reading amendment number 4, page 2, line 3.
Senator Hicks. Senator Hicks.
He's muted.
Here, say it again.
Mr. President, without any objections, I withdraw fourth read or whatever, withdraw the amendment.
That objection, third reading amendment number 4 has been withdrawn. We're back on the bill. Ready for the question on the bill? Question is Senate File 1005, having been read 3 separate times, shall it pass the Senate? Will the chief clerk please call the roll? I think the chief clerk went on strike. Yeah. Oh, there she is. She's waiting for the computer went to sleep. She's waking up the computer so she can call the roll.
Agar.
Agar, aye.
Aye. Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Aye. Anselmi Dalton.
Anselmi Dalton, aye.
Aye. Baldwin.
Baldwin, aye.
Aye. Bebout.
Aye.
Aye. Beitman.
Aye.
Aye. Boner.
Aye.
Aye. Bouchard.
Aye.
Aye. Case.
No.
No. Coe.
Aye.
Aye. Dockstetter.
Upstetter, aye.
Aye. Driscoll.
Driscoll, aye.
Aye. Ellis.
No.
No. Guru.
Peru, no.
No. Hicks.
Hicks, aye.
Aye. Hutchings.
Senator Hutchins' computer is giving her trouble. She's here in the chamber and she's voting aye. She's got a thumbs up.
Hutchings, aye. James.
James, aye.
Aye. Kinski.
Aye.
Aye. Cost.
Aye.
Aye. Landon.
Aye.
Aye. Moniz.
Aye.
Aye. Nethercott.
Aye.
Aye. Pappas.
Aye.
Aye. Rothfuss.
No.
No. Schuler.
Aye.
Aye. Scott.
Aye.
Aye. Steinmetz.
Aye.
Aye. Von Plater.
No.
No. Wasserberger excused. President Perkins.
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 1005, 23 aye, 6 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 1005, having received an affirmative vote of a majority of those elected to the Senate, has passed the Senate. Mr. Majority Floater, I just want to take 1 second and thank, we've had the chief clerk who's been doing just incredible work today, doing a job of 4 people that would be here during the session. Anthony's been on all day. LSO, Ian Shaw's been on all day. There's other staff that have just been here all day and just taking as hard as it's been on us, it's been twice as hard on them. Can we just give them a round of applause, please, and let them know we appreciate them. So
Thank
I
you.
don't think the hazard pay amendment applied to you, but anyway, we think good things about you all the time anyway. So with that, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
All right, Mr. President, I move the Senate adjourn until 9 a.m. Saturday, May 16th, 9 a.m. Saturday, May 16th.
Actually, I don't think we want to adjourn. I think we just want to recess.
Recess until Saturday, 9 a.m. May 16th. Got that little transition, please.
9 a.m. today. For the motion, any announcements for the motion? All those in favor, raise your hand. I think the voting is in the unanimous. Madam Clerk, is that what you see?
It is?
Motion carries. We stand in recess until 9 a.m. 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. We're having waves, but I think they're waves goodbye. I don't think they're waving for any more attention. Members, thank you for your attention. Long day, hard work. We'll see you in the morning.